Hello and welcome to On the Record. Flying saucers, extraterrestrials, monsters from outer space. The government has been telling us for years that they're not real. They're weather balloons or swamp gas or reflections from the sun or the ravings of lunatics. But serious UFO researchers say a breakthrough may be very close. Some of the government scientists who worked on the top secret project Blue Book are ready to talk. What's more, a series of revealing government documents have trickled out of the federal files, documents that paint a much different picture of the UFO phenomenon. One of the most dedicated UFO researchers lives right here in Las Vegas. His name is John Lear, and he is my guest today. Mr. Lear, thanks for being here.
Okay, George.
To begin with, you're a pilot, an airline pilot, captain. You have held 17 different world speed records at one time or another. You're a member of the famous Lear family that all Nevadans are pretty much familiar with, a former state senate candidate. You don't sound like the kind of guy who would get hooked up in something that a lot of people would say is a bunch of nonsense.
No, it's just by coincidence that I got really interested. This about 2 years ago. My father saw a UFO and my brother did, and they were very interested, but there was really no proof, as far as I was concerned, to really look into it until about 2 years ago.
Your father and brother saw them. Can you give details?
My brother saw one. He was flying a P-38 from Phoenix to Los Angeles at night. It just appeared in front of him. He made two turns, 90-degree turns. It stayed in front of him and then disappeared. And my father was flying at night, I believe, over the Arizona desert, and saw one too.
So you got an interest because of the other members of your family. How did you start out?
I had an interest, but there was really nothing I could put my finger on. And like I say, 2 years ago, a friend of mine came through town. We had flown in Southeast Asia together, and he was retiring from the Air Force. He came over, and we started talking about where he had been for the last 15 years. And he mentioned that he had been stationed at Bentwaters. And I said, oh, Bentwaters, that's where the flying saucer supposedly was in 1980. He said, no, John, not supposedly, it was. He said, I don't care if you believe me or not. It landed. I didn't see it because we were confined to quarters, but I know people who did, and I'll give you the names, and if you ever see them, tell them you know me, and they'll tell you the whole story. Since then, I ran into one of the security police who was within 10 feet of the saucer and actually saw the 3 aliens get out and go up to General Gordon Williams, who was the wing commander at that time.
Now, there was quite a bit of documentation regarding this Bentwater incident. Why don't you go into that a little bit?
There's the Colonel Halt memo that came out under the Freedom of Information Act, and it told about the mysterious lights and beaming down and everything that happened in the forest except the actual alien landings. That wasn't in the memo. And there was also the tape, Colonel Halt tape, forest tape, that he made over a period of 8 hours. And there's a 20-minute segment that we've been able to get a hold of that you can hear him running through the forest and being worried, saying the thing's after us.
Now, why do you suppose that hasn't come out? I mean, this particular incident, why hasn't come out if so many people, and you've told me about this before, have seen it or seen these aliens? Why haven't some of them come forward?
A lot of them have come forward, but they're just not getting any press. It's something that people just don't want to deal with, the press doesn't want to deal with, and people aren't going to listen to something unless Dan Rather or any of your big press people are going to tell them about it. And they're just too spooked. The Air Force has made an art form of ridiculing people who have talked about this thing. They've done an excellent job of covering it up for the last 40 years. George, basically what we're dealing with here is, I'll give you the bottom line.
Okay.
I'm not trying to sell it.
I want to hear your thesis.
I'm not trying to sell a book. I'm not trying to promote a lecture. This is based on what I've come across after intense research in the last year. And I have found out that the government has retrieved between 10 and 15 actual flying saucers, 3 of which have been in perfect condition, 1 of which they tried to fly. They have between 30 and 50 alien bodies in cryogenic storage. We even have the name of the person whose job it is to show these bodies to the heads of state and the people who are authorized to see them. They represent at least 5 different civilizations.
I can't imagine a Dan Rather or a Tom Brokaw, if that were to come to their attention, a story of that magnitude, that they wouldn't do something with it.
Well, I can't answer that question. I don't know why they don't do it. There certainly is enough evidence based on what I've looked at. For instance, the Linda Moulton Howe documentary in Denver for the CBS affiliate there called A Strange Harvest. Since 1975 to 1980, when she made the documentary, there's at least 9,000 cattle mutilations. Now, the government said that the mutilations were normal. Your desert predator did these, but they weren't. The mutilations,
I think we have a picture of these somewhere. Maybe we can see that as you're talking.
Well,
that's the next picture. There we are.
This is the mutilation. New Mexico State Police did the research on, or the investigation on it, and they cut out certain parts with and the cut was made with a laser beam far sharper than anything we have. As a matter of fact, they were able to determine that they cut between the cells and didn't cut the cells themselves. We presently don't have this kind of technology.
Well, if we don't know that we have this kind of technology, or you and I don't know that we don't, but that doesn't prove necessarily that it's ET.
No, except that there's usually a visual sighting of a flying saucer or a light, a strange light, at each one of these sightings.
Okay, you mentioned the saucers and the bodies. Now, what kind of proof do you have that is true? How do you know that?
Well, let me take a look. Let me read to you first what the Air Force says about the bodies. First of all, I'm going to read from the Introductory Space Science, Volume 2, Department of Physics, United States Air Force. This is Chapter 13, Unidentified Flying Objects. Now, this is what the Air Force has the students at the Air Force Academy read. And it says, the most commonly described alien is about 3.5 feet tall, has a round head, arms reaching to or below his knees, and is wearing a silvery spacesuit or coveralls. Other aliens appear to be essentially the same as Earthmen, while still others have particularly wide wrap-around eyes and mouths with very thin lips. And there is a rare group reported to be about 4 feet tall, weight of around 35 pounds, and covered with thick hair for clothing. Members of this last group are described as being extremely strong. Now, I'm not making this up. This is an Air Force. You can pick out an Air Force physics book and read this stuff. And at the end of the chapter, they go on to say, this leads us to believe in the unpleasant possibility of alien visitors to our planet, or at least of alien-controlled UFOs. Now, the picture that we have of the big head that the Air Force describes, this picture was drawn by an Army surgeon. These are one of the bodies that was recovered in the famous Roswell incident of 1947.
Tell us about that.
It was the first flying saucer that crashed and was recovered by the Army. It was covered up. There has been several books about it. They recovered 4 beings, and one of the surgeons that was responsible for the autopsy drew that picture and came up with some of these interesting things in the autopsy. I'll just read a couple. 3.5 to 4.5 feet tall, 2 round eyes without pupils, no earlobes, nose is vague, neck described as being thin, arms is described long and thin, reaching down to the knee section. You can see that there's a webbed portion in the hands, no teeth, no apparent reproductive organs, brain capacity unknown, colorless liquid prevalent in the body without red cells, no lymphocytes. And there's more in that particular report.
This is an autopsy report. Now, you said the government goes to great lengths, the Air Force in particular, to discredit this kind of stuff. Where did this come from? How did you get this?
That came in a private, that came from the private collection of Leonard Stringfield, who was one of the premier researchers. He worked for the Air Force in the early 50s in a secret project reporting UFOs. Then as a civilian, he continued his private research, and this is out of his collection.
Why does the government want to hide this? Why doesn't the Air Force just come forward? Why doesn't, why don't they level with us if this is all true?
Well, there's not really much they could say based on what I've been able to find out. George, they're really, what could they say about it? They've been researching it for many, many years, and based on my information, let's say that the president decided to make an announcement. This is, if he made it today, this is what I think that he would say. My fellow Americans, I come to you before you tonight with an announcement of great importance. Despite all our denials, flying saucers do in fact exist. Where they come from, we do not know. Who is in them, we do not know. Where they are from, we do not know, nor do we know how they got here or what they want. We are unable to duplicate any of the metals found on the several craft we have recovered, nor are we able to figure out how they are propelled. We have hidden these facts from you over the past 40 years in hopes that we could give you more answers. Unfortunately, we are no closer to answers today than we were 40 years ago. God bless you all.
In other words, you find it highly unlikely that the president would ever make a statement, anything like that.
No, it's just, it's too big. It's the problem is not only just the fact that there are five and as many as 10 different civilizations visiting us. Apparently, and this is from the research that I've done, at least 90% of them are hostile. And when I say hostile, if not hostile, they have a completely different set of morals than we do.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we're going to come back to the president and aliens because there have been some statements made by presidents, including President Reagan. We'll be right back. Welcome back. UFOs, are they real? We're talking with John Lear on the subject. Mr. Lear mentioned a couple of minutes ago about what the president might say about UFOs. Do you believe that various presidents have been informed about what you believe to be the truth on UFOs?
Each president has been informed up to and including President Reagan. I'm not sure to the extent they are informed. Privately, I don't believe they are giving the full briefing. The people that control this information is a organization that we know of as MJ-12, and they're a top group of military and scientists. And I do know that when the president becomes president, it takes at least 3 or 4 months before he actually gets the clearance to know everything there is. Now that doesn't mean they tell him, but it does take 3 or 4 months to get. Now, talking to the president, let's talk about what the president has actually said. Has he mentioned anything about aliens?
President Reagan?
President Reagan on December 4th, 1985. This is a copy of the speech from the White House just before he went over to Iceland. He says, I couldn't but, one point in our discussions privately with Secretary General Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children, wherever we may live in this world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet outside in the universe. We'd forget all our local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together.
Now, he couldn't be just making a supposition for purpose of making a point? You're saying he's trying to tell us something?
Well, here, 1 week ago at the 42nd General Assembly in front of the UN, September 21st, he says, in our obsession with the antagonism of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside, universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force not already among us? Now, this is right out of a White House speech. I'm not making this up.
What did he mean by this alien force? I mean, does it say? Does he go on to say something?
Yeah, he says, what could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our people than war and the threat of war?
I see.
But the point is, why would he even bring up aliens? I mean, it's pretty far out for the President of the United States to be mentioned threats from outer space.
Okay, what about President Carter?
President Carter, we have the quote from Carter when he was during his election campaign, if I become president, I'll make every piece of information this country has about UFO sightings available to the public and the scientists. I am convinced that UFOs exist because I have seen one.
Jimmy Carter says he saw one.
That's Jimmy Carter. He saw one in 1973.
But he didn't tell us, did he?
He doesn't. The pressure is enormous on these people to cover this stuff up.
How can that be? Are they afraid of a panic, that people would panic?
There's the panic problem, and there's also the problem that, in fact, in Cro-Magnon man, there may have been some tinkering to make us what we are today. And that's been borne out by several researchers. We couldn't have developed exactly the missing link. Something had to happen to get us going. Between 4,000 and 8,000 BC, we had just been going along and for hundreds of thousand years not doing anything. all of a sudden, bang, we started making pottery, invented the wheel, invented fire, and everything took off. What was the key that did that? I don't know, but it causes one to think.
You mentioned a couple of minutes ago before the break that you think 90% of these visitors are hostile. What makes you think that?
Well,
doesn't fit with what we think of as ET, you know?
If you read several of these books that are on the newsstands, one is called Intruders, one is called Communion. They apparently come down, and when I say apparently, this is taken from 300 hypnosis cases. A friend of mine has done 140 of them. And the people are abducted, they're taken up into a saucer, usually lasts about an hour. They do all kinds of experiments. They give them shots, they poke them, they cut them, they do all kinds of things, then wipe out their memory and send them back. Only after several months of some psychological problems do they end up going to a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist, on trying to find out what the problem is, in the use of hypnosis, finds out that this person has been abducted.
What's the reason for that? What are they trying to learn?
There's three things that they're trying to do with these abductions. The first thing is they're trying to monitor us. It started in the early 40s, and they'd put a little unit, very small BB-type object, way up in the backside of the brain, and they'd leave it there for about 18 years. They'd pick them up and put it in about 4 years old. About 12 years old, they would pick them up and monitor it. Then about 18, they'd take it out. The second thing they did is they put a post-hypnotic suggestion. According to many of the people that have been hypnotized, and we found out what they've told them, apparently within the next 2 to 5 years, there is going to be a big event. Something enormous is going to happen. And these people who have been abducted, and there's probably over 100,000 of them, have been given some place to go and something to do. But under our best hypnotic techniques, we cannot find out what it is.
So how do we know that that's true?
Because they said they're going to do something. They know that they're going to do something, but under the hypnosis, they can't find out exactly what it is. And the third thing that they do is genetic experiments. They've been crossbreeding. There's a very good book out now called Intruders, written by Bud Hopkins, and it's about a crossbreeding experiment with a girl in Indianapolis. And they actually, the big head, what we call the big head in research, the little 3.5 foot tall with a big head, they crossbreed that with this girl in Indianapolis, and there were 7 children. And just last fall, before the book was published, they brought the oldest and the youngest to show to her, and they let her name all 7. Now, this book has been thoroughly researched by Bud Hopkins, and although it sounds strange, believe me when I tell you, you may not find out in a month, a year, 5 years, or 10 years, but you'll look back at what I'm telling you now, and you'll say to yourself, my gosh, the son of a gun was right.
Well, where's this girl now? She's just living
on a farm? She lives in Indianapolis. She lives in town. Or just outside of town. She just got married. Bud went to her wedding. We all know who she is. She gets along, just fine. It doesn't mean, just because she was abducted and gave him children doesn't mean it was the end of the world. It was just a part of her life.
Why don't we see a lot of photographic evidence, as many cameras and video gear? Why don't we see a lot of that?
There are a lot of them.
Before you go on, I know the pictures that we showed in the beginning of this program, you say they're baloney, they're phonies.
That's right. The pictures you showed at the beginning were called the Myers incident. It's called the visitors from Pleiades. And any ufologist worth his salt knows, and who has researched that case, knows that he cannot back it up with the negatives and the essential information to prove that something like that happened. So we look at that as suspect.
So in other words, you run into your share of phonies as well in your research?
Absolutely. There's not that many, but there are a few out there. There's so many people that have real stories to tell that we're just so busy with those. For instance, let's take the November 17th Japan Airlines incident.
I'll tell you what, we're going to take another break, and we'll do that when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. We have a few minutes left with John Lear. We're talking about UFOs. You're about to tell me about the Japanese airline incident. It's probably something that's still in the memory of our viewers.
Yeah, the Japanese airline incident was a cargo 747 that had taken off from Iceland flying to Anchorage. And as he passed over the United States border and the northern part of Anchorage, he was intercepted by a UFO that was twice the size of an aircraft carrier, and he was followed by 40 minutes. He made a complete 360-degree right turn. He made a descent of 5,000 feet, and the thing stayed with him. Regardless of what you hear, the FAA did have him on radar, and so did the Air Force. If you have a picture there, this is a 26-page document made by Bruce Maccabee, who's a physicist employed by the Naval Surface Weapons Laboratory and one of the most respected figures in ufology.
I don't think we have that picture, so go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to hold it up here, and you can see the size of the 747 to the UFO. Now, the UFO was not brightly lit like that. It's just made like that for reference. It was dark, but this is what he saw beside him.
Well, whose rendition is this?
This is the captain's. This is from the captain's rendition when he was debriefed by the FAA. Now, certain UFO debunkers have said what he saw was the planet Jupiter. Well, this is an insult to all transport category captains around the world. I mean, the guy knows the difference between something that's twice as big as an aircraft carrier and the planet Jupiter.
I've also heard that it's the reflection of his own plane.
But the radar,
Yeah,
that was an
something like
attempt to describe it. You can't imagine what pressure these people are under to cover this stuff up. It's tremendous pressure. It really is.
Okay. You were going to tell me that the church, did you want to go further into the JAL incident?
No, I just want to say that's a 26-page report. It had the captain and the ATC conversation. It had the radar plots, and it had the Air Force plots and the FAA radar plots. There was no question about it.
You want to tell
the
me
thing followed him.
The church, what do they think about UFOs?
Well, here's a copy from the London Evening News, July 21st, 1987. And it says, "Prepare to meet thine aliens." Vatican theologians have acknowledged that there could be life on other planets. Now they plan to train missionaries capable of working in space and meeting aliens. Jesuit scientists at the Vatican Observatory in Frascati near Rome have reported moving lights and other identified phenomena in the sky. Starting in September, the Vatican University will have a special UFO section.
You've said before you thought a lot of their intentions were hostile, and you've mentioned before that a lot of the sightings are around military bases. Why don't we see them here, Las Vegas? We got a lot of military bases here.
Well, in fact, there have been a lot of reports of UFOs in and around Las Vegas, not specifically over the Air Force bases. We have the test site, and of course we don't know what's going on there, and we have Nellis Air Force Base, but there have not really been a lot of sightings over there. The main Air Force sightings were in 1975, and the UFOs descended on every Strategic Air Command base guarding the perimeter of the northern United States. And they hovered over the nuclear weapons storage area, and they stayed there with impunity for up to 2 and 3 hours over a period of 3 days.
And nobody heard about it?
Well, there was a few reports, but you really don't. I have a report 150 pages long of the F-106s that were sent out to chase them, and the helicopters, and notifying the Canadian authorities, and the security patrolmen that were sent down to actually see what was going on, and they'd come up on these things, and they'd say, "I'm not going any further."
You think maybe it's a top secret area, if the Air Force actually does have them, maybe they got him here?
I'm certain they do. Up at the test site, there's a report that of the 3 that they got in perfectly good condition, at least 1 is up at the test site and has flown, and 1 was being flown as of 1981.
By us?
By us, yeah.
We mentioned at the top of the show that perhaps a breakthrough might be coming, that some of these people from MJ-12 or from the Project Blue Book who are in on the government's research and who saw some of this stuff might be ready to talk. We got about a minute left. Why don't you tell me about that?
It's our information that part of MJ-12 wants to release it, part of it doesn't. We're hoping that we can do this, but of course, as researchers, we're not aware of all the ramifications. We just know of what we're looking at. So we would like to see them release it, but we really don't know if they are.
Okay, John Lear, it's been very interesting. You keep us posted.
Sure will.
Thank you. We'll see you next week with more of On the Record.
you